Hello, welcome to everyone. We are going to study about the rise of nationalism in Europe, class 10th in CBSE syllabus. Nationalism, what do you mean by nationalism? Nationalism is the driving force which not only unites each and every class of the people for getting the common purpose of liberty, freedom, but also shares their common identity and ethnicity as well in entire Europe at that time. To get freedom, liberty under the leadership, there were so many artists, so many dramatists, as well there were so many factors which tends to propagate this nationalism. Among them, Frederic Suro in 1858, a French artist who prepared a series of four arts that is called Democratic and Social Republics. And in that picture, in the first page of NCRT book, we see the dreams of the conservatives who ruled over entire Europe were shattered as pebbles, and the European people have their flags, have their own costumes, and are marching in a way visualizes the victory over the conservatism, over the absolutists. And there we see in the picture the symbol of Jesus Christ, which shares the common religion that we all are belonging to. We are belonging to a common religion. And what do you mean by the absolutist? Absolutist actually means there is a utopian vision at that time that does not tend to happen at that time, that does not likely to get, that is the liberal government, that is called absolutist government. And utopian also. Absolutist means a system, a rule in which there is a monarchical power of rule, there is one man, one power. And also it was at that time utopian vision that does not likely to be changed during that period. And in the picture of the Frederic Suro in 1848, Democratic and Social Republics, we see there is a lady, the female figure, the French Revolution personified liberty as female figure, which carry torch of enlightenment in one hand, and in another hand there is a book, and that book reveals the charter of human rights, the rights of human rights, which we right now we oblige, we called as rights of human beings at that time. And according to our NCRT syllabus, this nationalism, the European country, not only by the means of such among these dramatists, and not only by only this literature, but they also get by so many dramatists, so many figures, so many literatures, like people have personified liberal figures, female figures, and folklores, folk songs, which united the regional people, intended them to unite for themselves, that we belong to a common sharing of common culture, having one common identity, and we should respect each other to get a common purpose, to get liberal freedom. That is nationalism. And before nationalism occur, there were monarchical powers, that is called modern state. The first we should differentiate between modern state and nation state. Modern state, has been a monarchical power. The power is in one hand, and that belongs to dynastic empires in entire Europe. There were modern states, and after a lot of freedom struggle, it took a long period and it was slow process. People had forged, sacrificed their minds mentally and physically, sweeps as well politically, to get a nation state, that is one nation, that under the nationalism. That free state, free India, free European or any other state of the world is called nation state. And we can say in the chapter Nationalism in Europe, the first chapter of the class 10 deals with the French Revolution 1848 1789. The picture of the sorrow belongs to the peoples of Germany wearing the black, red and gold flag in the social and democratics visualizing picture. And German people did not at that time get a united nation, that is a freedom, and they carry the flags which symbolizes the liberal hopes in 1848 to unify the numerous German speaking principalities. Is it right? And the German peoples are the peoples of Austria. In German state, not only Austria but Kingdom of Sicily, Lombardy, England, Hungary, Russia, all were included. And in the picture there has been symbolizes that from the heavens above Christ, saints and angels who related to the religious values. They gaze upon them at that their freedom struggle, their sacrifice, and they have been used by artists. Why? To symbolize fraternity, to symbolize that we belong to same caste, same religion, Christians. So we should not differentiate, we should unite themselves to get freedom. During the 19th century, nationalism was a driving force which brought sweeping changes in mental and political minds of the Europe, and nation states became existed, and multinational dynastic empires of Europe were devastated, as shown in the Frederick Sorrow's scattered dreams of as a pebbles lying on the ground. And a modern state is a centralized power which is exercised sovereign control over a definite, over a specific territory, that is ruled by a king. That is modern state. And it had been developing, such kind of system was developing over a period of time, and it was, the power is being centralized over one man, one king. Whatever they opt, they thought, their rule, their order is supreme. No one can change their rules in modern state. And the peasants as well as the common people under the modern state were feeling a lot of exploitation in each and every sector. They wanted a one nation, a system, a constitutional monarchy, a government system that would privilege them each kind of freedom, liberty, fraternity. There should not be any differences in gaining power. So they opt for a government system under which people should have a fair and transparent governance. That's why they challenged, they sacrificed, they saved their mind to get a nation state. And the commonness did not exist from time immemorial. This change cannot be achieved by a slow, it was quite a slow process, and it was not achieved by a simple means. It took a long period, and it was forced through struggles. We mean to say people have fought for a long period and sacrificed their each and every valuable things, their lives, the action of leaders and the common people. They forged through struggle, they got freedom through struggle. So we will study how event wise, sequence wise these processes happened, which nation states and nationalism into being in 19th century Europe. There is a word plebiscite in the chapter page number 2 of the nationalism, which means a voting system in which a direct voting system in which people of the voters were opted to get a proposal. Either they may accept it or refuse. That is called a direct voting system of people in a specific or a certain region. People are asked to accept or dismiss for a proposal. That is called plebiscite. Now, how this nationalism occurred in France, and what were the main ideas of the French Revolution? The French Revolution and the idea of nation, how they are contemporary. So now we will study in the chapter 3 the French Revolution in 1789. France was actually full-fledged immemorial state under the rule of an absolute monarch, Louis XVI. Okay, that is a modern state. France was a modern state, and the political turmoil and constitutional changes amidst the French Revolution led to the transfer of sovereignty from modern state to become a nation state. And it was the people who would henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny after getting freedom. The French revolutionaries, what were the factors, measures they took to get this freedom? They reduced customary duties from 21 to only 2. Each and every business trades among the state or outside the state, they had to bear so many taxes, custom duties. And uniformity in transportation, communication, weights and measures were identified. These all things were being at that time reformed, and that helped, and they wanted from a long time for reforms in trade business. The idea of la patrie, the same fatherland, la citoyen, the citizenship, such kind of ideas united French people having equal rights under a constitution. A new French flag at that time was adopted the tricolor in place of formal royal standard flag. And how the governance took place, like in today's world we see parliament constitutes all, frames all rule regulations for a country. At that time states general was a body which adopted all rule regulations, and this state general were renamed as National Assembly. And the measures taken at that time, new hymens were composed, hymens, new oaths in memory of martyrs commemorated at the name of nation, and uniformity in laws for each and every citizen within its territory. Internal custom dues were abolished. A uniform system of weights and standardized measurement were adopted. Also, to remove the regional differences, disparities, regional dialects were discouraged, and one language, linguistic French language, were adopted to encourage the working in French, to popularize the French language, to symbolize the importance of freedom struggle, and it became the common language of the nation overall. The revolutionists declared it was the mission and it was the destiny of the French nation that will not only give the liberty, the power of freedom, fraternity, but it will remove all the despotic power. It will remove the despotism from the heart of the peoples, that will reshape the future, upcoming future of the their children's, to help other peoples of Europe become nations. This was the mission of the French revolutionaries. And from different cities, as news of the events in France reached students who were the revolutionaries, it was the mostly students and other members of elite families who were a new class people, who were the educated people. They want a total full-fledged change in socially, politically, as well as culturally, regionally, and they composed Jacobin clubs who vowed to get this purpose, that is freedom. And the Jacobin clubs activities and campaigns not only gave a way for the French armies to move in Holland, Belgium, Switzerland during the period of 1790, and the outbreak of wars during the midst of these activities, the French armies began to carry the idea of nationalism wherever they went. After all, how this idea of nation popularizes, and for this, awakened by the swathe of territory that came under his control during that period, Napoleon Bonaparte. After this, Napoleon Bonaparte, who want to capture entire Europe, and he was also known as have an ambition like Alexander, and to uniform rule and sustainable rule, he opted so many measures, reforms, like not only reduces uniformity in rules, regulations, custom duties, standardization of weights measure, uniformity in transportation, communication, but also he removed all the tax barriers for the transparency of trade, custom duties from 21 to 2, as well as he applied and formulated civil code of 1804. This question is quite important. What was the rule? What was the code? What was the reforms taken over by Napoleon Bonaparte that was named as Civil Code of 1804, and that is called Napoleonic Code. And by this rule, he removed all the privileges, facilities that was gained by birth or based on birth, established equality before law, and secured the right to property. Because during the modern state period, people have so many differences. First state people, second state people, third state people, first and second state people have their privileges by birth. The children whose father was working as the pope and ministers in the kingdom, after the death their children became the members. So such kind of privilege by birth Napoleon Bonaparte removed and established equality in governance, equality in before the law, and removed birth-based privileges, right to property. And the Dutch Republic in Switzerland, Italy, Germany, everywhere, wherever he ruled, Napoleon, all the rules were characterized. Napoleon simplified, regulated, reformed administrative division, abolished the feudal system, freed farmers from serfdom and manorial dues. As well in the towns too, guilds restrictions, tax restrictions were removed, transportation communication system were removed, standardized, artisans, peasants, workers, as well as the new businessmen, they have profound enjoyment, new bound of freedom, but still they were lack having power politically. Businessmen, a small scale producers of goods specifically began to realize that this kind of uniformity and reforms, standardized weights, a common national currency was opted by the Napoleon. It would not only facilitate the movement of goods and services, but also liberalize somewhat, to some extent, it would give, it showed a ray of hopes to the allied members of the businessmen and readers people, overall the common people of France. The reactions of local population to this French rule were somewhat intermingled in many places like Holland and Switzerland, as well as like Brussels, Milan, Warsaw, wherever Bonaparte ruled, French armies were welcomed and they were carrier of this nationalism. Initial enthusiasm overjoyed their hostility, and transparently the new administrative arrangements did not go hand in hand. Such kind of administrative reforms, until and unless there should be have the people should have their political freedom, both should run in parallel, administrative division as well as political freedom. Increased taxation for this censorship means restrictions on the publishing of any news. Therefore increased taxation, censorship, Forced conscription means forcefully recruitment of the peasants workers in the armies into the French armies. They required to conquer the rest of Europe. These were the political ambitions of Napoleon Bonaparte, and that's why entire Europe, so many people did not like his rule due to his taxation, increased taxation, somewhat to rule over entire Europe. He increased taxes, although he reduced custom duties, he unified currency, but there were some disadvantage in his rule, in his administrative division too. That is quite important question, and it is always being asked in CBSE exam. That is censorship, as well as increased taxation, forced conscriptions. These are some disadvantages, and these factors outweigh the advantage of the administrative changes. Moreover, after the period of Napoleon fasted a large empire in Europe, and Metternich once said about the French rule, French empire, when French sneezes, entire Europe catches cold. How can it be possible? If somebody or yourself or myself sneezing, then how other areas people being in cold? In terms of France, this became true, because at that period France was such a powerful empire, and in overall it was such a socially, politically, or you may say economically, it was quite accepted by entire Europe, the people of European countries, and each and every country, and even the peoples accepted the power of France. And that's why if anything changes happen in France at that period, then entire Europe get affected. The changes occurred in France. That's why Metternich said that if France catches cold, sneezes, then entire Europe catches cold. That is, its effect can be seen in overall Europe. How nationalism took place, how it reshaped, how it composed. For this, during the mid-19th century Europe, we see in Germany, Italy, Switzerland, at that time were divided into kingdoms, duchies, cantons, whose rulers had their modern state, their own king, autonomous monarchical rule. And Eastern and Central Europe, whenever we say, they were under autocratic monarchy. Autocratic monarchy means one man, one army, whatever the ruler wanted, no one can challenge their voice. Autocratic monarchy, that is in Eastern and Central Europe. And they have the diversified people among their territories. They did not see themselves as sharing a collective identity or a common culture. Here there is a ambiguity, here there is a differences among the people to bring themselves to get liberty, to get freedom, because entire Europe has diversity, and how this diversity can create a unity, that is unity in diversity. That I am going to explain you that Eastern and Central Europe were having autocratic monarchies, and people have different views about this freedom or nationalism. Why? Because on the terms of language, in the terms of different ethnic group means they have the similar ideas, the similar culture. They belong to either Christian. In some way, you can see that your neighborhood or your in a classroom, you children have the same culture, the same religion. These sort of uh, ideas are called ethnicity. So people having different language and belonging to different ethnicity did not see themselves as a collective identity in Eastern and Central Europe. Whereas in German, Italy, Switzerland were divided into kingdoms, cantons, duchies were ruled have monarchical rules. The Habsburg Empire at that period, the Habsburg Empire was a very large ruled over. It belonged to the Austria-Hungary, and it was a patchwork of so many regions and peoples, in which Alpine regions, the Tyrol, Austria and Sudetenland, which belongs to Bohemia territory, and the aristocracy was predominantly German speaking at that period in Habsburg Empire. You should notify Habsburg Empire have a great importance during that period, and nowadays too we can see we have a great reflection in our present day European politics. The Alpine regions, the Tyrol, Austria and Sudetenland as well as Bohemia, where the aristocracy was predominantly German speaking, and besides that Italian speaking people were provincing of Lombardy and Venetia. As well in Hungary, half of the population speaks Magyar, while the other half spoke people's regional dialects. Is it right? Such kinds of regional languages, having diversity in the people's ideas, people's culture, a great patchwork network that belonged to a great Habsburg Empire. It was quite a large empire. As I told you, Austria, Hungary, Sudetenland, Germany speaking people, they belong to German speaking. Hungary also, Galicia, the aristocracy spoke at they have different languages. Galicia, they spoke Polish language, often in Poland. So such there are three dominant groups, if you see, and they are lived within the bondage of this Habsburg Empire. A mass of subjects, peasant people, a peasant group, Bohemians, who were peasant group in Habsburg Empire, Bohemians and Slovaks to the north, Slovens in Carnolia, Croats to the south, and Romans to the east in Transylvania. Such differences did not easily promote a sense of political unity or identity. Often, to get freedom, to get unity among this diversity, Habsburg Empire, due to such kinds of disparities, differences, especially regional, this Habsburg Empire, which included German, your Austria, Hungary, Bohemians, Slovaks, there were a lot of struggles, a lot of wars happened, and that ultimately devastated their density, the people's density. The history says right now about the Habsburg Empire, the true fact it is. So how Habsburg Empire peoples unite themselves, they found themselves quite differences. I told you to get unified or to get unity among themselves for a common purpose, that is nationalism. So such differences did not easily promote a political unity. The only tie binding, which factor united themselves? Diversity was a common allegiance to the emperor. Among the people of Habsburg Empire, they saw our enemy, our purpose is one, and also our enemy is one, that is our ruler, who created, who devastated our liberty, our rights, our freedom. So they bound themselves, they united themselves by this idea that having common sharing among the Habsburg Empire, that each and every people have there in mind that our enemy is one, that is the ruler, the emperor. How did nationalism and this nation state emerge? These ideas of nation state. The aristocracy and the middle class arose. Socially and politically, a landed autocracy was the dominant class on the continent always during the modern state period. This aristocracy, members of this class were united by a common sharing, and they cut across regional division. As for example, they spoke French for the purpose of diplomacy and to show higher in society, and their families were often married by ties of marriage. This powerful aristocracy was in few numbers, and the majority of the population was made up of peasantry, and bulk of land was composed by tenants and small owners. That I mean to say you, most of the land belonged to the tenants, belonged to the small owners. And Eastern and Central Europe, land holding, who were the land holders at that time? The pattern of land holding was characterized by the vast estates. There was a large estate who were cultivated by serfs. Serfs are the people who have no rights. At that time, such kinds of aristocracy ruled over, and these aristocrat people were tied with their own ethnical people by marriages, and they live in town houses, they owned estates in the countryside, and the members of this class having a common way of life, not similar to like others. And western parts of Central Europe, the growth of industrial production, trade in Western Europe, it meant the growth, industrialization or growth in globalization, or trade means the growth of towns, urbanization that emerged, that tend to grow a new class, that is commercial class at that time. And these trade class people, business class people were based on production of the market. Industrialization began in England during the second of the 18th century, but in France and so many parts of Germany it occurred during the 19th century. Amidst of the social groups came into being a working class people, working class population. This new business class people, in which industrialists, businessmen, professionals were included Central Eastern Europe. These groups were smaller in number, only in hand. Just this group was growing, was at its initial stage. It was among the which elite members of the society who were the readers group, educated people, liberal middle class people, that ideas of national unity following the abolition of democratic privileges. They were against the privileges gained by birth, that is gained by first state people, second state people. Democratic privilege gained popularity. Such kind of evolution they wanted from a long period. Businessman class, new elite members of readers people, among which doctors, engineers, or you can say readers class people, students class. So this was the scenario of the middle class people, aristocracy. So my name is PANNA Das, yeah, and I used to teach social science of CBSE schools here in Bokaro Steel City, Jharkhand, and I have widely experience about 9 to 10 years, and I have told you a brief idea, a brief summary of this nationalism. Okay, best of luck. Next video I will update you. Continue watching me. Okay, with warm welcome, warm wishes. Thank you very much.